Hello and welcome to another episode of Showboys. My name is Mike. Thank you for joining us. As you'll notice, we got some new, well, not new, they're kind of old, but not in like that old kind of like language. I'm talking about like you've seen them on the show before. Wow, I'm digging myself a hole here, guys. I'm
Huh?
sorry. But yes, we're joined by our good friends Tim from the Funny Science Fiction PopCast and Casey from the Scene Snobs. Familiar faces if you've been around Showboys at any length of time. We're glad that you could join us, guys. My co-hosts apparently have just like up and left. They quit. I haven't seen them in months. So I've just been joined by guests every week. So thank you guys for filling in their shoes. Tim, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good, buddy. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat some more Star Wars with you. I think the last time you were on was our Star Wars
I think it was the Order
mega
66 chat.
Yeah, the Order 66 mega Star Wars episode. That was fun. And Casey, I think you were on that one too. You've been known to pop in a few episodes here and there. How are you tonight?
I am marvelous. Doing that much better because it's always a pleasure to be here hanging out with you gentlemen.
Oh,
So this is
stop it.
fantastic. So super stoked, and especially talking Star Wars, one of my favorite things on earth. So.
Yeah, actually, I just want to be completely transparent. One of the main reasons I invite you on is because you're always just such a good boost of like confidence and self-esteem with your lovely compliments. It just warms my heart.
Well, because you're that naturally beautiful, it's easy.
It's the beard, isn't it?
100%.
Yes.
Casey's conversations warm the cockles and the subcockles of the heart.
Maybe even deeper. We are not sure yet.
Maybe even just the cockles, not even of the heart. But anyways, we're here. Sorry, I have a throat thing going on, so my obnoxious throat clears will probably be more frequent than usual. But yes, we're here. We're going to be reviewing and reacting to the first season of Andor, one of two. I think we're only going to get 2 seasons of this show, if I remember correctly. So I recruited my biggest Star Wars aficionados to come help me review this series. The format will work very, very similarly to our Rings of Power review. So I'm excited for that. But before we get into it, gotta shout out our top tier patrons, Joe C, Yusuf H, and Tim B. Thank you guys so much for your support. You guys rock. All of our other patrons, you guys are amazing too. Thank you so much for your support. And join our Discord, check out our merch shop, all that fun stuff. Before we get into it, I want to allow you guys to plug your stuff. So Tim, why don't you tell everyone about the FSF PopCast?
Hi, I'm Tim from the FSF. No, I'm Tim. I'm one of the hosts of the FSF PopCast. I host a show. We have our own Nick. Not your Nick. That's not where your Nick went. Yeah. So, we have our own Nick and Kathleen. Speaking of Nick, look at that. That timing is impeccable.
Perfect. Yeah.
And but yeah, we have a weekly show. We do a live show every Monday night. We have a new thing that we've been doing for, well, I can't really call it a new thing anymore. We've been doing it for a while now, but every Wednesday night at 5, we do a 5 at 5. And it's the top 5 things or the bottom 5 things or whatever topic. This week's topic, that was loud. It was all about level up lightsabers, like the one I'm holding in my hand right here. And but anyway, we talked about with Master Allen, the owner of Level Up Sabers, and we talked about those and how cool they are and why everybody should own one. And then every Friday morning we have a pre-recorded episode that comes out, so check that out. But yeah, we're just a nerd and pop culture show that likes to interview people in our nerd and pop culture world and talk about. If I say nerd and pop culture one more time, it's gonna. Well, I kind of just did, but we're just gonna. This is why we have an edited show, and on the live show when I go unhinged, which Casey has been there many times to see it.
It's great.
Nobody really cares, but yeah. But check out the FSF PopCast. We're just a group of nerds that likes to have fun and share some laughs.
Nice. One thing I've learned, I watch a lot of true crime stuff, and I've been, oh geez, well, that would have been disastrous. Need to tighten that bolt. because that just came right out of the hole.
Right out there. Oh no.
Yeah. So I've been watching a lot of true crime stuff, and one of the main things I've been getting into true crime wise lately are interrogation videos.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've learned that I've tried to employ in my hosting, although it's probably not super comfortable for my guests, but if the detectives, they'll just kind of like ask a question and then they'll sit in silence and let the person just talk into the truth or whatever.
Right.
So what I've
you have
learned
an
is
idiot like me.
exactly,
You ask a question, and then the idiot like me just runs their mouth over and over again.
just
So
keeps going, and I'm
And
sitting here
this one
enjoying
time
the
at band
content.
camp,
It's just yes. But yeah, go check out FSF. Lots of cool stuff. You guys do a lot of cool interviews.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just if you're into the same type of things that we talk about here, you'll definitely be interested in what they talk about over there. Casey,
Hi,
my friend, tell everyone about the Scene Snobs. What you guys got going on over there?
Well, you can find us at the Scene Snobs. We have our live show every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. 9 to 10 is our general slot. We've also started our Friday morning live drive, which is always exciting to have a Friday morning show. Who doesn't want to be up and start your day with us at 7 a.m. going all the way to 10 a.m.? So it's fun trying to fit as much content as humanly possible into that crazy amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. We've brought back Geek Fest Live. So on Sunday nights, we do our live shows there. And then we've got tons of content on our YouTube channel that you can check out, and also pop over to our Discord, where Mick is the much harder worker, better looking, and just quite better all around. So I'm happy to be riding those coattails. So
yeah. Oh man, I love Mick. He's an awesome guy.
he is.
He was our first guest actually on Showboys.
Oh, wow.
And early on
cool.
was just like a super helpful resource for me. He was always super friendly, and whenever I'd have a random question, even though he didn't know me from Joe Schmo down the street, he would always answer and give me advice. Super thankful for that guy.
Incredibly
and-
knowledgeable, smart, sweet guy. He says hello, by the way. to
Oh,
everyone.
hello, Mick.
Hello,
Thank you
Mick.
for letting us borrow Casey yet again. I'll send payment via Venmo later.
I'm sure he's happy to be rid of me. I'm always like, hey man, what about this? What are you up to? What's going on? I've become a bother.
How about now?
Nice.
Yeah. What else?
Well, go check out Scene Snobs. We have links to Scene Snobs website and the FSF PopCast website in our episode description for you guys. Go check them out. Make sure you follow them on all the things. And without further ado, let's get into Andor. Before we get into the review portion, I just want to get like your general thoughts overall, how the show was, how you enjoyed the first season here. We'll start with you, Casey.
Okay.
What are your initial thoughts here on season 1 of Andor?
Well, season 1 of Andor did a lot of special things, and I really enjoyed what I got out of this show. Overall, it started weak. I didn't like the week to week. I was uncomfortable, unhappy. You brought this up about episode 3 or 4 to coming on this show, and I was like, not going to have much good to say. I think what it wound up doing was actually surprising me. I think it's one of those spy shows, one of those procedurals that you're along for the ride, and it's taking place like 24 on Jack Bauer. It's one day. So it takes some time to get through it. So they did a fantastic job at the end of the day. It really reinforced why Rogue One is probably one of my favorite in all of the Star Wars series. And it helped really make Rebels, which I think was a fantastic show. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't get into it because it was a cartoon and it had very cartoony, childlike aspects. This gave you the adult version of that. So overall, in retrospect and seeing what it did, how it did it, and the manner in which I think they brought the rebellion and the everyman to the living room. Oh,
sorry.
So sweet. I love you too.
It's gonna be so great for the audio only version.
I know, right? They're so excited to be like, wait, everyone just loves each other. Random love fest.
Yes.
So overall, what Andor did, more importantly for me, was bring back monologues.
Mhm.
It was able to actually bring forward the power of speech and the power of words, and really able to take away from the lightsaber action, but give you more with the feeling and the empowerment people were given for the rebellion, and why the rebellion got as fired up and as excited as it did. So overall, Andor for me wound up being one of the better Star Wars shows I've seen, period.
Nice. What about you, Tim?
At this point, I'm just going to go with what he said. Kind of hard to follow Casey no matter what. But one of the things, so he said monologue. One of the things I greatly appreciate about this show is the dialogue. One of the things that for me that's been missing from a lot of Star Wars, especially evident in some of the sequel trilogy movies, and even though I loved Kenobi, and I mean I really loved Kenobi, there were parts where the dialogue for me was just so rough, and I felt in this show that the dialogue it had weight, it mattered. The things that were being said mattered, and I also love it. I love shows like this because we're getting to see characters that we've never really gotten to see a whole lot of before. So Mon Mothma really has never been a highlight of it. She's been a background character who was just part of the rebellion, and one of the. But we didn't know anything about her. We didn't know really what she did. Rebels helps a little bit with that. Casey brought that up. And if you haven't watched Rebels, just forget the fact that it's an animated series. Please go watch it. It's freaking amazing. The storyline in that is just wow. And anyway, I could go on. That's a whole nother tangent. Anyway, but the thing I love about this show is that we're getting to see these characters, they're the details about them fleshed out, and getting to know more about them, and why this rebellion was so critical and crucial to them, not just as a planet or a group, but as an individual. Why was this so important to Luthen? Why is this so important to Mon Mothma? Why is it so important to Saw Gerrera? And even Cassian, who wasn't really invested in the beginning, by the end of this season 1, you're seeing how he's beginning to drift towards the rebellion, and why it's beginning to become more important to him, realizing that he's been in this rebellion struggle, as he said in the movie, since he was a kid, and not realizing it, but realizing that, yeah, in fact, that's what's happening. And so, yeah, I really enjoy that portion of it, that it's very much, and we've all heard it, we've all read it, and we know it's true. Star Wars is made for kids. Versions of Star Wars are made for older versions of kids, but this is the first Star Wars where I felt this was truthfully made for adults. That this had adult storylines and adult conversations and adult dialogue, where it was actually meaningful, and something was, anyway. Yeah, I could keep going on and on. There's the whole ramble thing we were talking about earlier, but those are the things that I really appreciate about Andor the most. It was just the build of the characters, the build of the plot, and how each episode led into the next, and why those previous episodes were important. They weren't just tossaways.
Yeah, and even though like the whole Star Wars being made for kid thing has been something that just resides in the back of my mind like at all times, I often forget about that. And you brought up such a great point. Like, this has a totally different feel and tone to it that is very adult, and I think that's part of the reason why it resonates so well, at least with us. I don't know, maybe the younger audience might not feel the same way, but
those wacky Gen Zs.
Yeah. But no, I would, again, hard to follow up either of you guys, but combined, like, there's not much left to say, except this is probably my favorite period in the Star Wars timeline. I love the whole Rebel against the Empire storyline, and seeing it again, Rogue One, one of my favorite Star Wars movies. So getting to see what leads up to the characters that we meet in Rogue One, fantastic. I love Cassian. Diego Luna is like superb.
Crushes it.
And
Absolutely.
it just, I think, along with the adult tone and vibe of the show, I think just the format of this series being that like spy thriller espionage type thing isn't something that we've seen in the Star Wars universe yet. Which, as a sidebar, I think that's what's so amazing about Star Wars is it's so huge. The world is so fleshed out, so built out. And even with that fact, there are still so many stories you can tell, worlds you can introduce, planets, species,
Right.
whatever, and that opens up the door to let you tell those stories in different ways, like whether it's the space cowboy western of like the Mandalorian, or here in Andor the espionage thriller. I would love to see something like kind of darker, horror oriented. I think that would be cool. I mean, come on, it's space. You can shoehorn something
Totally,
spooky in.
yeah.
I'm hoping that you'll see something like that with the Acolyte series that's coming, because that's supposed to focus on the dark side of the Force. So I'm thinking that's going to have a darker tone to it. So I'm hoping that we're going to go somewhere down that lane.
I'm very excited for that show. Very excited.
It's beautiful the way that this whole, like you mentioned, Mike, it really this world, these galaxies lend themselves to so many different stories. And I feel like with Rogue One and Andor, we finally get a lot more meat and potatoes of the worlds. It was a little bit in Solo, but Solo had issues, so there was a struggle there, and that was still behind Rogue One. So it gained from what Rogue One gave us. There's a couple other shows along the lines that do that too, but this show was much more of the Robert Redford spy game. Like we're following the ISB and we're seeing both sides of it, and it was wonderful the way they did that.
Yeah, one of the things I appreciate most about this, and we'll get into it more later, but one of the things I love about this is we're at 12 episodes in, so 12 plus hours of Star Wars content. I have yet to see a lightsaber. I have yet to see a Force user.
Yes.
It's just your average. What does Star Wars look like when we're talking about the average everyday person, and what the Empire and the Rebellion meant to them?
Yeah.
And this is what this series does. It shows us Star Wars in a completely different angle, completely different light. Now, I'm not going to complain if they at some point give me another badass Darth Vader hallway scene like in Rogue One. I'm down. I'm here for it. Let's go for it. But until that point, I'm loving this. And I'm loving this very, very much. A friend of mine, actually, I think it was John Wass, our producer. John, I think he calls Andor Les Mis in space.
100%. And it's beautiful to see that too, because you get to feel the oppression. You get to understand why was there a rebellion against the Empire. So many people have made the fun conjecture in the story of, the Empire wasn't so bad. And now we get to see, nah, man, you could be a person walking into the store and just get arrested.
Yeah. They were freaking horrible. 6 years for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right. Yeah. I think that's like we keep bringing up Rebels and stuff, but I think it's another thing that Rebels does really well too. Introduces that. But it's funny that you mentioned the lack of lightsabers and for the Force use and Jedi and Sith and all that stuff, because Dad, our producer, which by the way I forgot to mention, Dad's behind the scenes like always. So hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
He started the show this week just so he knew what the heck we were talking about tonight. And I don't remember how many episodes he was into it, but he like chatted me. He's like, are there any Jedi in this show? I was like, no, this is a very human, like just flat out human story. And I think that's, again, another super interesting thing about this series that we haven't really got in anything else, because it's all Jedi focused. Or, with the Mandalorian, you're planet hopping and you're seeing all these different, alien races and things like that. So again, it's just a very human story that is very relatable, trying to fight the man, which I love.
Not a Skywalker in the bunch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So, Casey, you said it was kind of hard for you. It took a while to catch on, to grab a hold. Why?
Okay, so it was an interesting show in that it was immediately I was drawn in by the aesthetic, by the look of it. The directors, those between Toby Haynes, Benjamin Caron, and Susanna White, did a fantastic job of really bringing the visuals, the thought. I struggled a lot with the flashbacks. I felt like there was
Yeah.
a lot of ground building, a lot of understanding that was repeat stories. And I struggled in the beginning because when you see that many repeat stories, you go, all right, get to the point. I already get it. I've already seen this. But then when you realize that sometimes it takes that many times to learn the lesson, and Cassian Andor eventually learns the lesson, but we watch him learn the same lesson over and over again before he finally pushes back. And I think that was fantastic. So it took me a while because being week to week, I'm usually a consumer of I want it all and I want it now. Get me to the story.
Yeah.
So the fact that we didn't, and it took us a while, I was very excited to finally see that. And it did take me a while to get into it because I wasn't really ready for a spy show, a spy series. There he is. That's the other guy of the
Nick!
Scene Snobs. The man, in fact, the Scene Snob himself.
Yes.
Appears.
He says this man clearly has no idea what Star Wars is.
Naturally, no clue. Yes. So that was the beauty of this, was the fact that they took the time to get there, to build the story, to give me this backstory that makes me understand and really feel the everyman within Andor. So that was part of what took me so long. The bouncing around to the ISB, I think, was probably what kept me in it early, was seeing the side of the Empire, was seeing a completely different side you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And this is not the Empire as the good guys. This is just the Empire doing Empire stuff. And that was fantastic. So I was a huge fan of that. And once that all really kicks off, I want to say around episode 5, once we get to the heist, I was more sold. I was more in. It just took that long to get to action because it's Star Wars and I want laser blasters.
I love the ISB. Like, oh man, that was amazing. Derpy 501st says, Andor is better than Mando. Yeah, I said it. Well, I enjoyed it more than Mando, and Andor didn't need toy merchandise to get season 2. Just saying. Oh, shots fired.
Brutal.
Speaking of laser blasts, there we go.
You have
got the
offended my
blaster out on
Grogu.
that one.
And I'm not going to disagree, though. At the end, Andor is a better show. It really was. I mean, all told, look, I love my Western in space. Do not get me wrong. Mando is awesome, and I will watch it till I die. But Andor as a product on a whole, as a season, as a 12-episode series, is one of the greatest shows and one of the greatest Star Wars tales, period.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I had I was hooked right away. What did we get? 3 episodes right off the bat. Yeah. So watch those 3 episodes, and I was like, dude, I'm in. You could give me like 50 episodes of this. That'd be great. And as soon as I finished up that 3rd episode of the premiere, I was like, this is already the best Star Wars series that we've gotten. Like, it's not even debatable. There was something else I was going to say, but it left my mind. Mick's beautiful face on the bottom of the screen there, it just
messed me up too, man.
Blasted my brain. The endorphins were too much. I couldn't hold my thought.
It's overload every time I get the vapors. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. How do you do that every week for like
it's tough.
A whole hour?
Yeah, I just have
to
to
sign on early so that you can just look at them and go, okay.
Yeah, it's honestly, I have another picture up you guys don't see right back here. So the whole time he's just a picture here.
Oh,
so
nice,
I'm always like,
I just imagine that your glasses are just like pictures of your eyes, and you're really wearing like the horse blinders, so you can't see anything.
100%. I'm surprised you're telling everyone. Thanks for ruining my secret.
Sorry, I didn't.
And done.
All right. Well, he's never coming back on the show. So yeah, let's get into the review here.
Do it.
And then I'm sure as we go through each category is maybe like favorite moments or story beats or anything that we want to like really push into. Feel free. Don't let the categories or anything like constrain your thoughts, guys. But first up here in the review, we'll be touching on the aesthetic. We're going to talk about the visuals of the show, this style that we had here for Andor. And I'm losing my voice right now, so I'm going to let Tim kick this off. What did you think about the aesthetics overall? Kind of give your thoughts, and then we'll slap a rating on there between 1 and 5.
All right, sounds good. So for me, I kind of, because knowing that it was going to be done by the same creative team, I was expecting it to be very much like, TV Rogue One. And going into it, and I love the aesthetics of Rogue One, and the way that the camera angles and just the way that they filmed everything, to me, was just amazing. And so I went into it with a high expectation, and I'm very glad to say that I was not let down. That the same feeling of Rogue One in many ways transfers to the small screen on this TV series. And the look of each of the characters, and the way that I love the fact that even on Ferrix, the planet, it could be in anywhere planet. It's not, it's not like Coruscant where it has to have all these big buildings and all this, flying machines and everything going everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a little podunk hole in the wall planet, but they made it look alive, and they made it look like almost welcoming, for what it was and where it was and all these different things. And so I appreciated the visual effects, that, the simplicity, but yet the strength of the visuals on this show. So for me, the visuals are, I don't like to give anything 5, because I always think that there's something you can do better somewhere, but I will happily give the aesthetics a 4.
Nice. We got a couple comments here. Nick says, I mean, hey, if you're going to comment and give your opinion, you should just be on the dang show. I mean, you're a host, bro. Just saying.
A microphone that you could be in front of.
No, I'll give Nick a break. He's out of town for a wedding, so he gets a pass.
All right.
But he says Andor is a great show. Mando is a great Star Wars show. I mean, everyone can
I would reverse that.
I'm going to actually say that Andor is a great show. I'm going to completely back up that first round, because it is, front to butt, is a fantastic show. Mando is a great Western show as well. It's not just Star Wars. It does have enough to rise above. So I think it does deserve that level of respect, that it has that. It's an action show. You could name it a few things. It'd be fine.
Derpy 501 says, kill Nicholas. Kill him now for that comment.
Brutal.
If he wasn't in a different state, I still probably wouldn't, because I
finish
like
him.
But
that's fair. And illegal.
It is very illegal, and I don't like to break the law, especially when it's taking a friend's life.
Right.
But yeah, I would say, I mean, they're both great shows, but I just think Andor's better.
I think it's hard, honestly, to compare the two because of the differences between them. I mean, one is very much a story-driven, methodical, personality-driven show, character-driven show. Mm-hmm. The other one is a Western pew-pew in space.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like Casey said earlier, I will watch my Western in space. I will love my Western in space, and I will watch it till the day I die, happily, because there's so many cool things about it. And that show has given me so many of the cool Star Wars feels. But, to compare the two, it's kind of hard, because you're comparing an apple to an orange.
Yeah.
Yep.
They may have a Star Wars title attached to them, but they're very different in tone and direction.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I want Mick, please format your comments all show in this tone. I love it, because so far they both have been the exact same. Yeah, clearly none of you have watched Tulsa King, and clearly you're right.
He's feeling very clear tonight.
Yes, I love it. Derpy also says, I'll say my favorite part of episode 12, the finale, was when the band and crowd started marching toward the barricade. When the tone of the music changed, I felt this presence of empowerment. Goosebumps.
Agreed.
Yeah, that whole
Absolutely.
scene there of the funeral procession, so tense. I loved it. And we'll definitely touch more on that and moments like that once we get down to the story section of the review. But yeah, that whole what was it, 10-15 minutes of that episode, so good. Yes. So Casey, aesthetics. I'm gonna try to stop smacking my hands right by my microphone.
It's way more fun when you
promises. Do though. But yes, Casey, goodness. What do you say, sir?
So aesthetic for this was fantastic, and I'm going to touch on a few points that Tim made as well. that one of the things I loved was every planet we were on. When we were on Ferrix, we were on Ferrix. Yet Ferrix reminded me a lot of, had similarities to Tatooine and other outlier planets. They're very plain, average, and similar. So it's kind of nice to see that it still keeps and ties in all of the places we've been and other planets, but gives us that similar sense that you kind of know what this is about. Most of these backwater planets look this way and they're all similar. Mando has shown us that, and every series and movie has shown us that. So it was cool to get that, but also Ferrix has its rusty feel, has its minor town feel. They did a really good job with that. The best part of the aesthetic in this show for me, bang for my buck, was the ISB. Getting that clean Empire feel, like even the way that people interpersonally worked, the idea that this is the most toxic workplace you could ever imagine. Like they really absolutely nailed that. Like that was pretty fantastic. Like everyone's just out to get everyone, and it's just part of your day. When you walk in, you better be ready because someone's gunning for you.
Yeah.
And they did that really well in just the way everything looked. It was that clean and uncomfortable to be around. Like if I walk through a place like that, I know I'm wrong. Like I shouldn't be there. I should never be in a room that clean. I've done something terribly wrong. So the aesthetic here, they really nailed. They did it well with the prison. Anything that was Empire related, we felt that when we were on a different world. We felt that like in the opening scene. He's not on Ferrix, and we feel that. He's in another planet that's raining all the time, another water world. Ugh.
Yeah.
Galaxy's filled with those things.
Did they like share some with like Tatooine and these other like dust balls? I mean, come on,
seriously,
gotta
right?
hog
Like
it all.
Manon can't give a little bit. Come on, come on.
No rain for you.
No rain for you. Exact. Camino is just rain jerks. They're rain hoarders.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's pretty fantastic with the aesthetic. I honestly, I give it as, once again, I will not give a 5 unless it really knocks my socks off. But the look of it was Star Wars and exactly what I wanted from Star Wars, so it gets a 4 all the way.
Amazing. Yeah, one of the things that I remember seeing in the teaser like a year or so ago, was they talked about how they filmed this. I don't know like the technical term because I'm not I'm just a fan of movies and film and stuff, but they are basically like, yeah, we shot this like cinematically, like this is going to be a feature film, which immediately caught my attention because a show typically doesn't do that because it's a show and it's not a feature film. But I appreciate that they went that extra mile to give it that that crispness aesthetically. And that fact alone, I think, is another one of those reasons that makes this show stand out from all the other ones. It just has that crisp cinema quality. Like you could throw that up on the big screen in your local theater and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if you're watching a Disney Plus series or Rogue One. And to me, that's amazing. And Nick talks about it all the time, the technology that they've used on the Star Wars shows here at Disney. I forget exactly what it's called because, I'm just a dork over here. But that technology that they use in like Mando and the likes already takes these series up a notch on most regular, even streaming service originals. But like, definitely above your basic cable or premium cable shows. The quality is already high in the Star Wars franchise show wise, but this one it's on a whole other like ladder. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's part of Disney. Actually, they have that soundstage set up that way.
Yeah,
so they just have it's all LED screens that make everyone who's been there has said they feel like they're transported to the place because it's not a green screen you're acting in front of. You're acting in front of what we as the viewers are going to see.
Yeah,
so it definitely has brought the actors' games up as well.
Yeah, and it does such a cool thing for the lighting effects, and like especially in a show like Mando where his whole suit is basically a giant mirror, like getting the actual reflections of what we're seeing off his suit instead of like trying to do that in post and like CGI that crap on there or however they do it. Like it's just it's what they've built there is so cool.
It's special.
Next level stuff. But yeah, I can't really add too much. So again, I'm gonna take it up a little bit. I'm gonna give it a 4.5
Okay.
because
Okay.
it's
Solid.
crispy. It's
Okay.
crispy. Gotta appreciate the crispness. So Nick says also can't beat laser swords on spaceships. I mean, yeah, hey, who can beat laser swords on spaceships?
I mean, that's why, episode 1 is even worth merit in the first place, is it's one of the greatest lightsaber fights ever. It's not a lot going for
Very
it, but
true.
it's got that.
It's very true. Mix, he's back in here, and he already broke his train of
Clearly,
clearlies.
it's not
But
the same commenting style.
yeah, clearly he didn't hear my request in his comments, but we'll let it pass. He says, in my opinion, Andor is a better written show, but Mando is a Star Wars show completely. It's the fun adventure that the Holy Trilogy was. Andor's tone isn't the same.
Agreed.
Yeah,
He's right.
Mhm.
nailed it.
He's absolutely right.
But again, I think that's what's so great about the Star Wars universe is it just allows itself to have that uniqueness in all of its entries. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for all the future Star Wars things that we're going to get, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're gonna get back to the review. So yeah, so we got a 4, and a 4.5. So looking pretty good aesthetically. Let's head over to characters. Now this should be a really fun one because there are some top-notch characters in this series. I'll just list out some of my favorites here. I mean, of course, you got Cassian, but Cyril, played by Kyle Soller, amazing. He's our ISB like
Wannabe.
psycho detective guy. We got Luthen, of course. He was amazing. Mon Mothma. My favorite character, probably aside from Cassian, Deidre.
Yeah.
Like she was so good, so
Yeah,
good.
100%.
We had a Denise Go. I'm so bad with names, so I'm probably butchering these. But we
It's
got
either Go or
Vel.
Golf. It could be
Yeah,
Golf.
yeah. We'll go with Go. We'll go with Go. We had Vel, who's played by Faye Marseille, who is in Game of Thrones, for those of you who may have recognized the waif, the faceless man's servant. Took me like by the second episode, I'm like, why does she look so familiar? I'm like, oh, Game of Thrones. Marva Andor. Marv, so good. So
Marva.
freaking good. Fiona Shaw knocked that one out of the park. Of course, you got Karis, one of the rebels, played by Alex Lothar, who is in The End of the Effing World and a really, really, really disturbing, but also extremely good episode of Black Mirror, by the way. If you like that show, go check out the episode that Alex is in. But be warned, it is highly disturbing. But I loved his character here in this little rebellion here when they're pulling off the heist. How he's like writing his like
the manifesto,
tyranny manifesto, and like it's what a great character. And of course, Kino Loy, Andy Serkis. I mean, just amazing.
Yeah.
Needless to say, the characters, there's so many good ones, and they're all so well developed, like greatly cast, perfectly acted. I don't know. I love it, but I'm interested in your guys' opinion. So Casey, start us off.
Well, for me, one of the best part about Star Wars has always been the characters. It's the only reason I got into this show and have remained in this show is because characters like Chewbacca, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, they exist. So, I mean, that original core is going to be a 5 no matter what. One of the best things about most of these shows, Mandalorian, Rebels, the reason I go and watch the cartoons that I do, Clone Wars, is because of the characters. Andor did not slouch on the characters. You bring up Kino Loy, phenomenal. And not only Andy Serkis' acting and the way he employed his prowess essentially behind that character, but the fervency with which you start to believe the rebellion and you're into the rebellion. What they did is they drew you in deeper and deeper through characters. It was absolute character development. I think Nemec, his speech that he was giving through his manifesto was one of the best parts of the show, period. The full stop on that. He was crushed it. And it's also fun because he's the one you think is the weakest, who winds up being the strongest, who goes the furthest. So I really love that. Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen is, come on. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård. Stellan Skarsgård. Of course, he's going to crush it. And like you said, the mom. I don't know why I'm forgetting her name now. Miro. Deidre. Deidre was ISB. Sorry, Marv. Yeah. Marv is the mom who she crushed it. Was awesome. Fiona Shaw, absolutely amazing. But Deidre, and the thing about the ISB is the fact that all of them were done just as well. They were done just as well as the inspiration to follow the rebels. I wanted to hate the Empire. I also wanted to be part of that because I wanted to be better than them. You want to prove that you're better than them. You want to move up in those ranks. So the characters here are what drove me through it and kept me coming back. As few as I like to give in my life, this was straight up a 5. No questions asked. These are some of the best characters in Star Wars and continue to proliferate as well as Obi-Wan did.
I got to say, talking about styles of shows and stuff and the ISB, they need like either an Office or Office Space style show about the ISB.
Amen.
Please.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could even go like Parks and Rec. I don't care. Just something along those lines in the ISB.
I think we brought that up on our live show a couple weeks ago.
That's amazing because this is ISB Sector C.
Yeah. Here's a quote that it might not be exactly word for word, but Dad, it was one that Dad found particularly interesting. So much so he had to Facebook message me about it, and I loved it. But the line from Nemec's little manifesto where he says, "The imperial need for control is so desperate because it's unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear." It's just like, what? That's amazing. So good. And
you
this
guys want to
show,
go destroy something? Let's go.
Holy crap. And this show is just chock full of amazing dialogue and, like you guys have been saying, monologues, just like so many good moments. And it's not just from one or two characters. It's like half of the characters that I listed on that list initially have amazing lines like this, or dialogues or speeches or whatever. Like, it's just, I don't know. You don't normally see it so spread out amongst like each character group. Like, I don't know. It's just,
and the power of each one. Like, I mean, you have a dumb droid, B2Emu. I mean, all he is just a little scrapper droid, and yet you fall in love with him. I mean, every single character, he is so cute.
A droid that stutters.
Exactly.
Right?
It's brilliant. It's so great.
It's like when he started stuttering, I'm like, in my brain, I'm going, somebody had to program that.
Yeah, that was a programmed thing. Like, it's wild to think that. But they did such a fantastic job with every single one of these characters. They lock you in and they bring you along, and they make you care. You believe in every single one of them, and even the ones you want to see fail. You feel a little bit bad when the one guy, loses his job and is going back to live at home with mama. Like, it's uncomfortable.
Dude. Yeah. I love, like, I got such like an American Psycho vibe from him. I loved it. And you're so right. Like, oh geez, as much as I hated him, like, he's just trying to do his best. Like, he's like all in on the Empire, and just like, he wants it, and he was like, he was right. and
then he kind of falls for Deidre, and he wants to be with her, and she has no idea how to accept a compliment because she's been nothing but ruthless and cutting her whole life to get into her position. So you start to feel for her. She's insulting this guy that she might have a thing for because she doesn't understand, feelings. So it's a lot of fun to deal with those little moments.
Couple.
They did such a great job. Power couple all the way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's definitely who enslaved Kashyyyk. I think that that sums it up right there.
Perfect. And then Jeff, behind the scenes, Dad, he says, some of the best crafted and believable characters I've seen in the show. It's so true. He also says they're the love story of season 2. Deidre and Cyril.
I want to see that. That's some
Man.
S&M stuff. It's going to get harsh.
Do we like mash their names together? Are they Deedril?
Yes.
Yes,
Ship
they
them
are.
off as Deedril?
Mhm.
Yes. Man, either way, they both sound way too close to Pokemon names. And like, I'm sorry, I'm a huge Pokemon nerd, but like Deedril or Seadra, like Beedrill or Seadra, come on. I'm
Or
a fan of either.
Abraxo. I mean, there was clearly this was Pokemon heavy influence names.
Yes, for sure. I see you over there. Even his mom though was like a character that made you feel things. Like
Mhm.
I hated his mom, but
She made me feel like murderous things.
yeah, but
I'm like,
it
how
just,
is this woman still taking in oxygen? Because
Mhm.
I mean, the boy couldn't even pour a bowl of cereal without his mother coming over there and be like, "Oh, that's not how your uncle would do it." You know?
yeah.
Mhm.
It's just, it's great that even such a minor character like his mother could like get you feeling things.
Mhm.
Like
Got you
most of
involved,
the time,
yeah.
it's just like a throwaway character to advance another character or whatever. And I mean, that's kind of what she was, but it's still, she was a character that you hated, and I don't get that from like tier 4 characters in shows or movies.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's fantastic. Tim, your thoughts? I mean, hard to follow up a 5.
Yeah, it is. Because like he said, I personally, like I said earlier too, I personally don't like to give out a lot of 5s on these type of things because I always think that there's something you can do better. So before I get into it, I'm gonna pre-qualify my whole thing with a 4.87. So
That's definitely the most obscure rating we've ever had on our show. So thank you for that.
yes, you're welcome.
Nailed it.
So one of the things I love about Star Wars is the fact that there are all these characters that are in the background and they have an opportunity to have limelight turned on them and you get to learn more about them.
Mhm.
Star Wars did this with the Book of Boba Fett. They brought in, and because no matter what people want to say, other than a few books that are now considered legends, he was a background character that stood behind as a bounty hunter and had a few cool lines and looked really cool standing behind Darth Vader. Until the prequel trilogy, we really didn't know much about the Fetts and all that stuff, but we now know so much about Boba Fett because of the Book of Boba Fett and what happened to him and seeing that fist put through the sand. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Anyway, but it's much the same here. We talked about this pre-show. The fact that I got to see more about Mon Mothma, I love it when we have these characters that are fleshed out and characters who we've seen in Rebels, the animated series, that we've seen in in different very brief clips of other shows and other movies, but no real speaking parts and no real sustenance to them or why they're there. But they have an important role because of other things that you've learned through legends and lore and all these different things. But to see it actually brought to the screen and have it done in such a powerful way. So to have Mon Mothma's story told and personally, as I watched her throughout the series, there's parts of where the season where your heart kind of breaks for her because she's going through some serious emotional turmoil and how to do this without getting caught because she knows it's the right thing to do, but she also knows that she's dancing on some seriously thin ice. And there's all these different things going on and you feel for her and what's what she's going through. And so for me, I love storylines like that and seeing these characters that were lower tier characters being brought to the top. They did it in Rogue One too with Krennic, the character you didn't know anything about, and whether he was there before or not, I don't know. I don't ever remember seeing him in anything Star Wars prior to that. But by the end of the movie, you both hated him and felt bad for him because of the way he was written and the way that Ben Mendelsohn acted him, which was fantastic.
So good.
Amazing.
But there's all these different ways that they're handling these characters. And you look at Marva, who at the beginning, the first couple episodes did nothing for me in the first couple episodes. Honestly,
Yep.
I was like, well, it's just Andor's mom. She's just there. No big deal. And then by the time the end of the episode 12 and she's giving that speech, I'm like, basically what Casey was saying earlier, we're going to go break some
Ready
crap.
to
Right, let's
run
go break
through
some
a
crap. I'm
wall.
ready to go break some crap. Let's go do it.
Go.
You know, I'm over there putting
Yeah.
on my shoes, and my wife's like, "Where are you going?" She's telling me to break stuff. I gotta go.
Yeah.
This is
We've
like
been
Limp Bizkit,
sleeping.
but talking.
Yes.
So
Wake up.
yeah,
Ryan Day should have played that for the Buckeyes. You know,
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm
Would have been
still
helpful.
salty. So,
suck
I
eyes.
can tell.
Anyway, but hail to the victors. Anyway,
Awful nice out here in Virginia.
that's right. But yeah, so for me, anytime I get to see an explanation of more in depth about characters and have them really explain so well, even with Saw Gerrera, somebody we talked about pre-show, the simple fact that when we see him in Rogue One, he is crazy pants. That man's brain is gone.
Fried.
Oh yeah, he's so far gone. When we see him in Rebels and when we see him in Clone Wars, you can see that where he's going. You can see the arc that he's going to take because of some of his actions in the animated series. But now even to see him here and see that at this point in the game, he still has so much love and care and compassion for his people, and he's there to fight, not just be there for his people, but to fight for his people. And he's upset with Luthen, and that whole dialogue between him and Luthen, just talking about it kind of gives me chills down my back, just because it was so powerful. That to me is why this show is so important, the character development, and being able to piece those different shows together and see that arc, to me, that's chef's kiss.
Yeah. Can I real quick, I totally forgot to mention Saw Gerrera in my list, but he is probably my favorite character in all of Star Wars. And it's the simple fact that like each time that you see him pop up, whether it's Clone Wars or Rebels, now here in Andor or in Rogue One, or like Casey said, Jedi Fallen Order, the game, which by the way, it is actually Forrest Whitaker, which is really cool.
Really rad.
Each time you see him, like you just see his slow descent into complete madness, and it's like a different character every time, and it's so well done across all of the animated to video game to live action. It's just executed like nearly perfect, and his descent into madness is one of my favorite things because like he's just like you said, Tim, he's so passionate about fighting for his people and like delivering his people to salvation, essentially, right, from the Empire.
Right. Oh yeah.
And
he's got the Che Guevara feel.
It consumes him. It completely consumes him. And man, it's just a beautiful thing to see. And it's across like multiple like different platforms, animation, video game, live action,
and
it's
holler out
so
to Forrest.
cohesive.
Holler out to Forrest Whitaker for the fact that he is committed to that and loves his role, loves that character.
Oh yeah,
and shows it, and has really committed to which segment of his life is he in. He has given that to us, the viewer, to see that, to feel that, to watch that downward spiral to someone that you really want to cheer for.
Yeah,
like you should want to cheer for this guy who's also a terrorist doing terrible
right,
things,
right,
murdering a lot of people. He killed a lot of people.
Like the descent into madness is very real and
very
fast. Like
very large blood trail following.
Yeah,
it, yes.
It's less of a descent and more of like a complete nosedive. At some point, it's just like he's like, you know what? We're pushing all chips in, man. Let's go.
And you can see that. I think the video game does that really well, where you see that point of I've lost this many now.
Yeah.
Like between to get past the Clone Wars and into that point of the Fallen Order where you're like, he is just keeps losing. And he becomes only the fight. And all that is left is the fight. And it's really, that's what I think Rogue One was beautiful in that moment.
Yeah.
Well, and like you see it here with this conversation with Luthen too, because he's like, wait, how do I know you're not giving me up? Like, how do you know you're not going to put me in this situation? And how that like ultimately is kind of what like earns his respect with Luthen too. Like, he's like, that's crazy. I can totally get behind that. Gives him the old like forearm handshake. He's like, I see you, Luthen, you crazy son of a gun.
I know where you're going with that. I'm with
yeah.
you. Let's go. Murder is
totally
okay.
something I would do.
And you mentioned it earlier, but we were talking about the ISB and Office Space type of deal. But all of a sudden, this quote just came to my mind from Office Space. So each day you're living is the worst day of your life. Yes. And tomorrow, that'll be the worst day ever.
That'll be the worst day ever.
And the day after that, that'll be the worst day.
Yeah.
And that's like Saw Gerrera's, movement forward. Every day is worse than the last, than the last, because 100%. Every day he's losing somebody that has meant somebody to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if his sister would have stuck around, I think she was the glue that kept all the crazy together.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If she hadn't got killed off, we may have had a totally sane Saw.
Yeah.
Or mostly sane.
That sounds funny to say.
And yet, would a totally non-insane Saw have been enough to kick off and do the work that needed to be done?
Absolutely not. You needed a little crazy pants to do some of the stuff he was doing.
Got to have a touch of cuckoo to murder that much.
Or a lot.
Yeah.
You go for the handshake, he goes for the stabby stab. I mean,
Same.
Whatever gets the job done. So let this again be the second PSA for those of you who have not watched the animated stuff. Like, you have done yours. I'm gonna shame you right now. This is a little Showboy shame segment. We might, if this goes well, we might do this every week. This is totally new.
Showboy shame.
That's right. We need a soundbite. Shame on you if you've disregarded Clone Wars and Rebels. They are holy crap. Like,
so good.
It just tells so much of the story that you're missing. And if you're a fan of Star Wars, but you see these and you're like, oh, it's a cartoon. Like, I'm 35. I'm not gonna watch a cartoon. Not like I'm speaking from experience or anything, but
I'm 46 and I'm gonna watch a cartoon.
No, you do need to watch these two series. They just they're so important to understanding, especially like this time period, right? Especially Rebels, but to like fully grasp the weight of what's going on here with the Empire and the Rebels, like those shows are absolutely necessary, especially because you have characters like Saul that are introduced. I mean, technically Saul was to the mainstream fan introduced in Rogue One, but like you see his start here in like the Clone Wars and then continue on in Rebels. Like that stuff's very important.
I always tell people that if you watched the prequel trilogy and you felt like there was a huge time gap between episode 2 and episode 3,
like about 7 seasons worth,
maybe.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. There was a huge time gap and you missed a lot of information. And if you feel like you need, if you want to appreciate that era of Star Wars more, then you need to watch Clone Wars. And then if you want to appreciate the Rogue One, all right before that time period and right before New Hope kicks off, you need to watch Rebels.
Obi-Wan does. Yeah, what Obi-Wan does for Rebels and getting the what the Inquisitors in was fantastic because in Rebels they're so great.
Yeah, well, and then like that's where you get Ahsoka, like and all the like the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars might be like my favorite part of Star Wars as a whole, and how that ties into
unabashedly cry in season 7. I've watched that show at least 9 times all the way through season 1 to season 7. I may have just restarted my 10th rewatch. That's not the point here. But every time I get to season 7, I know it's coming, and it's still those last couple episodes, man. That's just
that's why Rebels season 2, man, hits me right in the gut. What they do with Ahsoka, bro, come on. I did not see that coming, and I was not ready.
I have a funny story about
Kanan's story, his arc, his finish.
Yep.
Oh, brutal.
That moment you're talking about, Casey, with Ahsoka. So I think you guys know my background with Star Wars. Like I avoided it basically my whole life because I was like a Star Wars hipster. I was like, I'm not gonna like it because everyone else likes it. And randomly decided to go see Rogue One in theaters whenever that was out. Thought it was super cool, but I was at that point I was like, there is way too much stuff to like catch up on, that it was overwhelming. So I just kind of like let it go. Then we did this. We did our first companion series on The Mandalorian season 2, and that like hooked me. And hearing Nick explain all the like background stuff of things that were happening that happened in other shows and stuff, it's like, all right, I got to do it. Like I just got to do it. So yeah, I watched some of the movies, watched the prequel trilogy, and then he's like, all right, now you got to watch like Clone Wars and Rebels. I started with Rebels because it was shorter. I got to that moment in season 2. Like I know that Anakin is Vader and all that stuff. But I get to that moment and I'm like texting Nick. I'm like, my mind is blown right now, but I imagine it would have completely exploded if I had watched Clone Wars first.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to pause this right now. And then I watched all of Clone Wars, came back, and I was like, yep,
boy.
Where's my brain at? I got to pick up all the fragments back there off the wall.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
that was amazing.
And then Rosario
series,
Dawson crushed it. Sorry.
Yeah. And the animated series adds so much to my appreciation of even shows like this, because we're going to see a lot of and I didn't, and here's the thing, I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't like put 2 and 2 together that, Andor and Rebels are in the same time period. And until I think it was about episode 10 or 11 and some of the crap that Mon Mothma was going through. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, she's going to be on the Ghost next season. They're going to have to get her and pull her out and save her. And all of a sudden my mind, same thing, just like, I'm like, and I started getting chills because I'm like, we could see the Ghost. We could see all the Ghost crew.
Chop. I just want to see Chop.
I want Hera so bad.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Chop. Oh my gosh.
So
actually, just everyone from that show.
Yeah. And also people who, to sell more on that, Mike, anybody who is interested in Mandalorians, you will love Rebels and the Clone Wars because they get so in depth with Mandalorians. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Very much so.
Man.
Sabine.
Now I want to go watch that. And plus, all right, we're just going to completely derail this even further. If you're at any rate interested in watching the Ahsoka series that's coming soon, you're not going to know what the heck's going on if you don't watch Rebels, because it's basically like the spiritual successor, like the sequel to Rebels, live action.
Season 3 of Rebels.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some of the cutscenes that they've already shown, like one of the first ones is of Sabine standing in front of the wall at the end of the season 2, the final episode. They're already showing that, and I'm just like, oh yeah, it's a massive chills down your back moment.
I'm like, I'm so excited to see.
I saw that and I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it. It's almost like
the
Leo
meme.
It's happening. Oh my God, it's happening.
They're doing the thing. They're doing the thing.
Yeah, pretty much. My wife has gotten used to my nonsensical screaming at this point when it comes to Star Wars. So.
Oh, Tim's just watching Star Wars again.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's our TED Talk on why you should watch the animated series.
And thank you for
I haven't given my rating for characters yet. I'm gonna slap a 5 on it, just because
good man.
It's too good. Though I mean, I could go on and on about each character. Deidre is probably my favorite, but I think what
she grows on you.
Yeah, she's just does such a good job of making you dislike her, like,
but like her at the same time.
Yeah, like you can you understand it. Like you root for her because that other ISB twat was like a giant douche, and you're just like,
jerk, man. Screw that guy. Yeah, I want to see her beat that guy by enslaving and destroying the rebellion, and actually, wait a minute, she's hunting.
But then I'm like, oh crap, she's trying to catch Cassian. Maybe I don't want her to do that. But
And
what?
then she potentially might find love, but it's awkward love. Like, this is
Yeah.
great. Yes, find it, but die soon.
Yeah.
Smoochy,
Yes.
smoochy.
Yeah.
Kick the bucket,
If
let's go.
that like little weird closet room that they're in there at the end of episode 12 would just like catch on fire, like that's fine. But at
It'd be
least they
great.
found each other, right?
Spontaneous combustion. It's a thing.
But I
I've
think
never
what
cheered for someone to be trampled before, so that was a strange feeling. But it definitely brought up something I wasn't ready for.
yeah. And hey, that's just a sign of good art, just really makes you think about things. But no, I think what puts the character section over the top for me is Luthen's performance and how one of the things that you're so used to seeing in Star Wars, mainly because it's targeted towards kids, is you clearly see in a definitive good and a definitive bad, right? You don't see a lot of gray area. At least personally, I could be totally speaking out of turn here, but what I love about Luthen is like he's clearly on the good guy's side, but he is a very morally gray character, and you see it in his conversation with Saul, where he's just like, "Yeah, we're just gonna give up Krieger, whatever. Like,
People gotta die.
it's gonna happen, right?" But what really really sold it for me was that conversation in the elevator, or like just outside the elevator with the ISB informant.
Oh yeah.
That was so good. Because you hear from his side where he's like, I forget exactly what he says, but he's like, what if I had to give up? Like and then he lists off like
does
literally everything that makes somebody like a human being.
Person.
He's like,
Yep.
yeah,
Kindness, love,
Yeah.
forgiveness, joy. I've sacrificed everything. I love it.
It was so good. But it just, again, like you're just like, man, like I want this guy to win, obviously, because he's on the good side. He's fighting the good fight, but like he's got to do some like not great things to like get there. I feel weird, you know. But I love it because it's something that I haven't felt or seen really personally in a Star Wars entry. Because the good guys are like good and the bad guys are bad. And it's not hard to see them clearly defined. Sorry,
no, very true.
the voice.
No sorries at all. And in fact, it's I think one of the things that we've also all skipped over here, which is, Cassian Andor, Diego Luna, as the character actually kind of crushing it because he's so fantastic and he does such a good job becoming the character that the Cassian we know from Rogue One, where he is willing to kill, has done all these things. So watching him grow and become that, it does a fantastic job. It's a clear A to B, the same way Saw Gerrera, we see his crazy grow. We see this guy grow full-on terrorist. Like we watch him become radicalized. That's what we've seen since episode 1 when he's a child. And that's the beauty of this is the story of the radicalization of someone and how that comes about and eventually winds up just helping destroy the Empire, just one small part. And it goes back to the manifesto, which goes back to the characters, and they just smoked it.
It's just, it's too good. I don't know how you didn't give it a 5, Tim. You jerk.
He tried. No, he tried.
I was strongly considering it. I'm having a hard time getting there, but 4.87 I think is a really good effort.
It's still pretty good. Good.
Solid.
One last thing about Andy Serkis's character Kino. One of the things that one of our Discord members and listeners pointed out. Let me find it. I wish I had thought of this earlier because I could have had it prepared. But basically, in the jailbreak, here it is. She said the whole episode was amazing. Talking about when they revolted in the prison and escaped there at the end. But he said, or she said, Andy Serkis's performance also had me in tears. Just thinking that he knew during the whole storming sequence, like, overtaking the guards and leading the people out, that he wouldn't be leaving at all because he can't swim, but he like helped everyone break out anyways. So good. And like a minor detail that I think maybe got overlooked in that whole thing is like he doesn't go.
Yeah,
He stays there. He's like, I can't swim. Like that
Yeah,
wasn't
Cassian-
like a comedic break. That was like kind of tragic because he has to sit. He is staying there in the aftermath, like knowing full well things are not going to end well for him. But being the person that he is, he helped everyone else like get out. This so good, so good.
Yeah, something that really inspires Cassian too is all the different people he meets like him that he continues to bump into. Is like, these are fantastic people who all die or aren't able to make it or sacrifice themselves for something greater, and that it's so consistent in his story. And of course, it's a good show because it makes us love the characters before it murders them. It's very Game of Thrones. So.
That's true. That's true. If only Sean Bean was in it.
Well, he would have been dead episode 2. I would have totally actually been sold earlier if Sean Bean was in it, because he would have died early and I would have been like, all right, I'm in.
Yes. I'm just so happy that she brought that up because it was something I overlooked until she mentioned it. But yeah, so let's move on to the story section. About halfway through. We're just burning right through it. Let's go with you, Tim. Lead us off with what you thought on the story of Andor.
So, the story of a man named Brady. No, I really appreciate. So I didn't at first. I'll be honest with you. With the supersized pilot that we had, episodes 1, 2, and 3. At the end of the first episode, like, the aesthetics were cool. I knew that I was kind of getting into the character. I already liked Andor, but I was already, kind of seeing some different things about him. And so all those things, I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch it. Plus it's Star Wars, and I'm going to hope to see a Darth Vader scene here soon enough. So I was watching it for those reasons. And I kind of went into it with the approach of, well, I know where the story's going, so it doesn't really matter. I know what's going to happen. He's going to die, so what's the difference? He's going to be a rebel, what's the difference? And I went in with really low expectations, and I'm actually really glad I did, because going in with low expectations helped me to appreciate the way that the story, it has a very slow burn to it for the first couple episodes. And once you really see that they're not just giving you, a piece of flank steak and a 4-day-old potato. You're getting some freshly mashed potatoes with some garlic and butter, and and you're getting this really nice T-bone set up over on the side over here.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful meal that they're setting out before you. And as you realize that, the show becomes so much better and the story becomes so much better, because it's not just a passing story. Whereas, like, okay, so to contrast, we've been doing it all night between Mandalorian and here with Andor. There are things about Mandalorian that I remember, but it's mostly because the things that in Mandalorian gave me the old school, like Mick said earlier in his comment about the fun adventure that the Holy Trinity was. Okay, and a lot of the things in Mando that I remember are because of that, and the callbacks and all the things that it was doing. I feel like I'm going to remember more about Andor moving forward because of the strength of the story, and that the way that the story is developed, and the way that and we were talking about the characters, but they're part of the story. So the way that every character is layered into the story, and it's just like boom, 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 just keeps going for the entirety of it. And so for me, I went in expecting to, rate it. If I was to rate this at the beginning of the season without having watched anything, or even at the end of the supersized pilot that we watched, I probably would have rated it a 2 or a 3. Because I went in with low expectation. I got out of the first 3 episodes thinking, yeah, this is going to be an okay show. It'll be okay. It'll be good, but I know what's going to happen. And by episode, I think it's 5, 6, somewhere in there, I had no clue what was going to happen because so many different things were now happening. And you kind of, it's like watching a game where you're going, what's going on over there? Oh, but now it's over here. What's going on over here? It was all these moving shells. And so so I will give the story a solid 4.91.
Woo!
It's a very close to a 5, and
That
this
was a
will
big
be
turn.
the closest thing that I get to a 5 for the entirety of this review tonight, because I would, like I said, went in with low expectations. I came out of this at episode 12 ready to go do something, damn the man, because of how good the story is and the strength of it. So for me, it way exceeded any of the ill-advised low expectations that I had for it.
Perfect. Casey.
For me, it was actually something very similar. I went in with no expectations, with no idea what they were going to do, only knowing that Cassian Andor was going to die, and we're probably going to watch something like a grown-up Rebels. That was as much as I was going in with it, except without Jedi, of course. And I didn't even know if that would happen. We had Obi-Wan, and we got Inquisitors and all kinds of different fun little tidbits there. So I was like, well, let's see what Andor is going to give me. I, much like Tim, by the end of episode 3 in the supersized intro, I went, this is a 2 at best. This show will never get out of that basement, and it's trapped there forever. And of course, I was proven wrong gleefully with a wonderful slow burn a la Spy Game. I think this thing came together so well and was like on the level of all the King's Men. Like it took everything that they laid out in the beginning, and without even explaining it, by episode 7, you realize how it's starting to intertwine, but you haven't seen it yet. And then the true tendrils of how everything connects is in episode 10. And then, just like Tim said, by episode 12, you're ready to go fight. Like it's we are being radicalized as the viewer, not just because of the characters and their incredible the journey these characters are going on, but it's actually the story that's being built between the ISB. What's happening at the prison, and when we find out that little thing that they're making their interlocks with some bigger thing. So it's beautiful to see that, because that's also indicative of what the story is, with Andor and Ferrix being just one little spark in the rebellion that's going on everywhere. The same way the Empire's building up their big thing, the rebellion is building up theirs. And so it was a really wonderful way to see that, and to see where all these characters eventually grow from. So for the story, for me, it turned out absolutely beautiful. I was a big fan, and I cannot wait to see where it's going. So easily a 4.
Nice. Yeah, I was the opposite of you guys. This was my most anticipated Star Wars project that came out of whatever Disney Investor Day or Star Wars Day that they announced like the 15 Star Wars things they were working on.
Right, and the fact we're not getting Rogue Squadron, boo.
Yeah. So yeah, ever since this was announced, this was the thing I was most looking forward to, and I think it's, obviously because of my love for Rogue One, but as you guys were talking, I think subconsciously, like, I like the idea of telling a story in which everyone already knows the end to, which sounds kind of like counterintuitive to like consuming a story, because you already know what's going to happen. But I think that allows the writers to like really be targeted and have like a very clear landing spot. One of my least favorite things about TV shows in general are the ones that just run on and on and on, just to continue to bring in the cash or whatever. Looking at shows like, it's a stupid show, but like Grey's Anatomy, it's like on season 72 or something, right? At Showboys, we have the sweet spot of like 3 to 5 seasons. Like that's where we like to see a show land, because it's long enough to tell like a really complete story, but also short enough to like keep it very self-contained and like on point throughout and not drag on. Go ahead.
And you're also not going to lose like actors and have to constantly swap out characters, and now you have to change storylines because this. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
Right.
I love the first 3 seasons of Grey's, so I'm with you.
Yeah. It's that stupid bus, man.
Man, like a
Rip
train.
George. Yeah. Anyways, so going into this, I'm like, we already know what's going to happen to Cassian, right? But I expect, you know, again, we knew that it was going to be 2 seasons. So I'm like, they have, I mean, they already have the end goal in mind. Like all they're going to do is just fill in all the things that we want to know. Like it's in my mind, it was going to be hard for them to mess this up, really. So I had very high expectations from the very start. And even though the basically premiere movie that we got, it is very slow burn, but I was just hooked. I was like, I gotta know where this goes because I know where it's going to end. So like I can't wait to get all of the juicy like details of like how we got there, how Cassian got there. I do have a question though, like who is his sister? Like have we seen his sister in anything, or is this like some undiscovered thing? Like are we going to learn who his sister is, or am I just dumb and completely like overlooked his sister being in Rogue One or something?
No, his sister is one of those MacGuffins. The sister is one of those things that like every single member of the Empire, everybody who was under the boot heel of the Empire lost people consistently throughout their lives. It's kind of that continuing message of loss, of always the Empire taking something from everyone all the time, that omnipresent loss. So I think they did a fantastic job actually showing it through that. And I hadn't even really considered it until you just brought it up now. And it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
no,
he
that's
does have
what
a
it
sister
is.
out there somewhere, I think, right?
Well, it's that hope that he wants to have a sister out there, but probably
not.
not. Yeah.
But yeah, I just the story kind of bleeds into almost every other category we've talked about so far, especially with the characters and stuff. With it being such a human story, with the lack of the laser swords on spaceships and blaster fights every episode, a lot of the story is interweaved with the character development and these monologues and these amazing conversations. So for me to give it any less than a 4.5 would be just blasphemy at this point after everything I've talked about. So 4.5 out of me. This one is probably going to be at least my lowest scoring category with action here. So I'll just go like first, I guess.
Fire away.
We had two really cool action sequences that stick out to me. We have Luthen's like crazy ninja ship where he like just like I don't even know, like I still can't process what happened there where he was basically getting pulled over for like a space traffic ticket and like all of a sudden has like lightsaber wings and he's like chopping TIE fighters in half, doing barrel rolls. Star Fox would have been so proud. That was amazing. That was so amazing. And then of course the finale, the funeral procession, the amazing like riot that breaks out there and all that chaos that ensues while it's not a lot of fighting. The tension that they build with the basically the breakout of this riot, man, it was just I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Those two scenes really stick out, but aside from that, it was just a lot of characters talking to each other. So for me, action, I'm gonna have to put this down at like a 3. I'll give it a 3 because the two big action pieces were amazing. But that's all we got. So for me, a 3. I'll kick it off to you, Casey.
All right. I don't remember the dude's name. Melshi, I think it was. No, not Melshi. Melshi was the one in the Rashi. Okay, so he was one of the guys who was part of the heist, and he's the one who recommended, "Hey, why don't we just take this money?" And Andor does a thing, and I don't want to. Well, we're spoilers in this at this point, right? Like we're clear.
We're pretty
We can-
deep into spoilers at this
All
point.
right,
Yeah.
Okay, dope. So when he shoots that guy after the heist, that honestly was the highest point of action I needed in this show. Like I think what they did for action was use it perfectly and really intertwined it well. And like you said, when we have a moment of the Luthen escape ship, and it's like, okay, so that's kind of how they got in and out. You know, it was legit sort of heart pounding moments. So action for me in this wasn't so much about getting the big shootouts or the duels, but it was about being an Imperial Guard imposter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're legitimately a stormtrooper, you're an imposter, and you were feeling that. So for me, that was where my blood got pumping. And that
Mhm.
was the action for me. So that's why I continuously say that this one actually held up, and I give it a 4 in its action. I
Nice.
think it was used very well. And I think the heist is probably one of my favorite heist jobs, period. They just nailed such a really cool, simple, basic premise that's been used a billion times and will be again, and they crushed it. So yeah.
Yeah, the heist was super cool. And just I love the use of having these sleeper rebels like
Mhm.
embedded in the ISB, embedded in that base on whatever planet that was. Those moments create like this show had so much tension,
Mhm.
like so
Mhm.
much tension. Um,
It was like a
which
Dean Koontz movie.
yeah, I mean, you have to have that tension for a thriller like this. But yeah, perfect. Tim, please.
So I'm gonna just jump right into my rating. I'll give it a 3.5. Because I firmly see both of your points, and it could the argument on Needle could go either way. But I lean more towards Casey's end of the argument because the drama is where the action is, and the tenseness of the dialogue and what's happening and the sub levels behind the scenes and how these things are all setting up. That's where the action is. The problem is that we're trying to compare this as a Star Wars joint to other Star Wars things where there's not all the constant pew pew pews and the lightsabers
Mhm.
whooshing across the screen. I actually love the fact that when it was time for the TIE fighters to come out, that they just didn't go, all right, send out the TIE fighters, and they dropped magically out of the bottom of the ship. I love the fact that it showed them having to run down to the TIE fighters, actually climb into the TIE fighters, have them
Mhm.
released from the docking bay, and then be
Mhm.
able to fly out. All those things, they're minor things, but those are important things. And I guess that goes back to the story portion of this, but that's still part of the action. And seeing the TIE fighters and flying out and all these different things, I like that a
Mhm.
part of this. And that doesn't really build into the action portion of it, but that was where the action was to me, was that all
Mhm.
these little things that added up to these bigger things, these bigger points of the story and these bigger points of the detail that made me want to see, well, okay, well, if they're willing to, explode and blow up this one little portion of the story, what else are they willing to show me? And
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I started coming back every week, because I'm like, okay, they're blowing up this part of the story, and I'm getting to see more about this character and more about what's going on with this person's storyline. And man, the drama is really picking up around this guy. I wonder what's going to happen next. And then you go into the next episode and they're like, yeah, we'll get back to him. Don't worry. Here's the next portion. This is the next part where you're going to feel the action and the drama and all this tenseness. And I like
Mhm.
that. However, with that being said, I am a big fan of the pew pews and the vroom vroom sabers. And so
Of
Yeah.
I
course.
wouldn't have mind had I had a few of those, at least a few more pew pews, I probably would have given it a 4. It's
Right.
not that it's a boring story. It's not that it's not without action. It's just a different type of action than what we're used to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well
For
put,
sure.
because I agree, especially like that scene where, the ISB agent is walking in as Deidre's trying to research and reading something. That alone was like a 5-minute walk down a hallway, and that was
Right?
action packed. My heart was thrumming. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Gonna catch her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's You phrased it perfectly. It's just a different kind of action, and I think where that kind of trapped me was, I mean, Rogue One was full of action, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
had like the crazy basic planet explosion on when that we're with Saw, right? Then you have like the storming of the beach, and then you have like the big battle going on above the
Space
planet there.
battle, yeah.
Lots of pew pews and explosions and all that stuff. But the lack of your typical classic action is not a detriment to this show. Actually, I think if you had more of that type of action, it would take away from everything that they're building here.
Yeah, agreed.
So even though I gave it a 3, I appreciate that 3 very much.
Right.
Because that 3 is just solely on like the lack of your what you would think of as action in Star Wars.
Of course.
But
Agreed.
you know, hey, it is what it is. And plus, you know, I didn't want to seem like I was just like way super fanboying out about my favorite Star Wars show. So I had
The
to
funny thing is,
knock it down a notch.
I'll join you on fanboying. I'm going to totally allow myself to fanboy on this because I sat through Boba Fett. So I earned Andor. So-
Nice.
we
nice.
all earned Andor.
Yes, yes. Well, that brings us on to
Now I want to argue.
we have
about Boba Fett.
two categories left. But I'm thinking about scratching the last one in format. We'll just talk about that right now. I think we'll get
Okay.
we'll drop this. I like the idea of this category, which, you know, format we're talking like, is this genre, like this thriller spy espionage, like what this show needs to be effective? Is it the right format basically? And so like, yes,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeesh.
Like I don't
100%.
think we can rate that because it is. If it wasn't this, it just wouldn't be what we got.
Absolutely. If it weren't this, it couldn't be anything else. It's
Right.
not, and he's not an action hero. You know,
Yeah.
he is part of the subversive underbelly of the net of the rebellion. You don't want to be above board. You don't want to be seen. You don't want to
Yeah.
be an action hero. You're not trying to be, you know, like the honorable knights who are arguably fighting, you know, for the higher ideals. This is an underbelly guy who's going to shoot someone just to steal stuff and make sure he gets by for the next day.
To survive, because if you get
To
seen, you
survive.
die.
Mhm.
Yep. So we're just gonna scratch that. The last category we have here is world, and we're talking how they. Well, with Star Wars, it's kind of unfair because Star Wars already has an amazing universe that we're very, very familiar with. But I guess I'll phrase it like this: like, how did they do inserting this story into the world that we already know? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Tim, start us off with this.
Okay, it's a 5. So if you noticed, I was slowly building to the crescendo. But yeah, so, and I've kind of alluded to this a couple different times. I love it when they're able to take something and build it in and show me something and give me something about characters and things that I don't know, things that were in people, in places that were such minor bits and pieces, like Mon Mothma being such a minor bit and piece of you know, other shows and such, to now having such a massive role in this and fitting into this. Now we see her place. Now we see why she was so important. It was alluded to in Rebels, in the in the animated series. It's alluded to, and you can kind of see a little bit of it, but we see really even more of it here. And I can't wait to see what they do with her in season 2. I'm so excited for her like, you know, just grand arc in season 2. And that's, I think she's going to have a bigger story to tell in season 2 than Cassian will, personally. But they took all these bits and pieces, and the way that they interwove the characters with the story and even the action, you know, and all these different things, it not only fits into Star Wars, the whole, you know, universe, but they put it in there, and then they tucked it in nicely. They made sure it fit, and they patted it down, and they kissed it on the forehead before they went to bed, and everything about the way that it's brought into the Star Wars world, in my opinion, is the best way that could have been done. And so, like comments that were made earlier, this is not just an amazing Star Wars show, it's an amazing show.
Mhm.
And the fact that you put the Star Wars label on it because of the universe it's in shows how well it ties in, and that makes it a better show and a better story.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I just want to make one comment here because I think I forgot it either in the character or the story section, but I think it fits in here with the world building. I love how at first I was like really confused about the relationship with Mon and her husband,
Mhm.
like why they just have this general disdain for each other. But I love how they don't really like upfront explain what's going on. You find out through a conversation that like back where she came from, like they do arranged marriages and like
Yep.
you just kind of are stuck with what you get. And
Mhm.
that was the end of it. Like they
Mhm.
didn't, there was no crazy like super long exposition of like, you know, flashbacks or anything like that. It was just
No.
like, man, these people really hate each other. I wonder why. And if you weren't paying attention for like 15 seconds, like you still would be like, man, I really wonder why these people hate each other. But I appreciate it when storytellers do that, where they like make you have to pay attention and pick up all the details instead of, you know, spending 5 minutes explaining something to you.
Mhm.
But as far as world building goes, like that's a really interesting thing. Like we have like some Game of Thrones style, like political marrying off of children in Star Wars. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah, that part kind of got me too. Just the fact that when she was trying to talk to the guy about the new way of banking and all that stuff, he's basically there to pimp out his son.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, I'm not saying it has to happen, but you know, an introduction would be nice. And I'm like, dude, slow your roll. I mean, she's right there. Come on, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that you raise a very good point. I had forgotten about that as well, but yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be mentioned. Absolutely.
And it absolutely raises the stakes for where Mon is,
Mhm.
because she's not only doing this for herself and for what she's up against, but she's trying to protect her daughter, who unfortunately she may have to marry off. And then
Yeah.
also dealing with basically who was the rich frat boy husband who kind of won the lottery with Mon. And
Right.
she's like the hardcore, crunchy, going to Harvard, going to change the world kind of person. So it's fun to see how all of
Yeah.
that paired together.
I
think it's
also love
wild.
how she's like cousins with Vel. Is that
Mhm.
are they're
Yeah.
like cousins?
Yep.
Loved that. I also it speaks a lot about Mon too, and as a parent, obviously, we can all relate. Like her daughter, like I'm not speaking we relate on our children hating us, but like her daughter clearly favors her father over Mon, like doesn't want anything to do with Mon. But
Teenagers.
even still, like Mon's like, I cannot do this to my kid. And
Yeah.
man, what a pickle she's in, because it's like you either kind of got to do this or your whole life is screwed, because they're gonna find out.
Isn't it kind of funny though? As a parent, though, I watched that portion of the show and I'm like, I could see why she'd want to sell that child. And on the other hand,
Yeah.
as a parent, I'm also like, no, don't do that. That's bad. That's your child.
Dude, the dirty looks that kid is giving her, that kid is acting her face off,
Yeah.
and that is brutal. Like, that
yeah,
hurt
that-
me.
That
Yeah,
kid
yeah.
throwing some serious heat at Mon.
Yeah.
Woo.
And she's like one dirty look away from Mon being like, you know what? Just take her. Just take her. I
Oh
don't
my
even care
gosh.
anymore.
The patience for even someone who's going to eventually be the mother of the rebellion to not jack slap her in the face has got to be saint level.
Yeah. Okay. So we
Absolutely.
got some instructions here from the one and only Snob himself. He says, "Go to bed, Casey. You have a morning show from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow."
I
Yes,
do,
I
in
do.
fact, and
It's-
that's the Scene Snobs presents the Snob Nation Morning Drive Live. Check us out live at 7 a.m. Ooh.
It's an amazing
did
show.
that.
Lots of fun.
You
Check it
did
out.
a very good radio voice there. I
Why,
like
thank
that.
you very
That was-
much. I
that's good.
appreciate it.
Good.
I've been working on it for years.
You do voiceover work, right?
Occasionally.
Yeah. So there you go. Hire this man. He does amazing voices.
Yes, he does.
But anyways, back to World. Tim, you went or did Casey go?
I went.
I'm
Yeah.
losing my
Went
mind.
with
All
a
right, Casey.
5.
Casey.
I threw it on
All right. And I am actually going to do the exact same thing here. This gets a 5 for 2 reasons. Number one, when we're ingratiating ourselves into the Star Wars universe, I want to see other parts from the Star Wars universe. And this show did that. It gave me the same ships. It gave me different settings. It gave me similar settings. It gave me all of my things that I wanted to see. Plus, I got the ISB. So I actually got way more into the Empire. I think that side of it, I can't downplay enough how much I wanted that and didn't know I wanted it. It's exciting to get that other side of the people who are actually, putting down and murdering entire planets. So it was kind of neat to see that, like the absolute ferocity of cruelty and just evil. Uh, it was fantastic. It was really well done, and I enjoyed the way they used the Sith infighting, even in their own ranks as the Empire. That the only way to get ahead is to claw and tear at the other one and pull them down and put yourself above them. There were a lot of interesting things they did that because that's going all the way back to the Sith. That's the Star Wars like baseline AB, bad good. So they did a fantastic job pulling all of that into the world, also building the world in this for the sake of the rebellion and finding out who we're up against the rebellion. And also, how about the fact that the Empire gets paid? Finding out something about the world there that, yeah, these dudes just make money. It's just a job. So you can go take an entire sector's worth of bank, like a Fort Knox level thing. Like, it was really fantastic to see that.
Yeah.
They did a great job with that, and also showing the face of the rebellion and the fact that this is one spark on one planet. And this
Yeah.
happens a lot in order to get the group we eventually know 5 years from now. And then
Mhm.
10 years after, so it builds beautifully. So the
Yeah.
world, I think, is part of the reason this show succeeded as much as it did, because it was the most Star Wars that Star Wars could have possibly had. That was fantastic, and I was a huge fan, so loved it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 too. I like it for the little things that we talked about earlier. Like I believe it was you, Casey, that was talking about like the cleanness of all the ISB set pieces. I loved Ferrix, how it was just kind of like that, like very industrial type, like brick and mortar. Like they have that wall where they hang up all their gloves at the end of their shifts. Love the huge like bell tower in the middle.
It felt like Pittsburgh in the 70s, but future Pittsburgh in the 70s.
Yeah,
So figure
I've
that
always
out.
loved. That's something I've always appreciated and talked to Nick about. Is how like in Star Wars you can like jump parsecs and like travel all throughout the known universe, but you still have people living in like mud huts, just like and like computer screens from like 1980. I love it. I love the the odd future time that we're in here.
Right? Like
they
when
haven't
when
discovered 4K, but like space travel, no problem.
no issues. And it's kind of fun how they do that, and it shows that delineation between the core planets and the outer world.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what was
yeah.
going on in those outer rim planets. So they do a good job of showing that.
It's super cool. Yeah, it's just like we talked about earlier. Each planet that we saw felt so different and so unique, and yeah, just the little things like that. The environment pieces. Of course, the lore part of the world building is amazing, hands down. Like, doesn't need talked about because you guys already covered it. But yeah, it's just they nailed even the small like minor things that you maybe aren't necessarily like paying attention to, but those small things like the way Ferrix looks and feels, like it keeps you in, right? You're not like it doesn't make you suspend your disbelief and like think about why Ferrix looks the way it does. Like you're just like, oh yeah, I mean this is Ferrix, man. We've been here, but we haven't. But like we've been here.
There's
I
a
just
comfort. Yeah.
yeah, a familiarity with something that is unique, if that makes sense.
Nailed it.
But yeah, just all in all, my favorite Star Wars show. Where do you guys rank this in your Star Wars series we've gotten so far?
Go ahead, Tim. What you got?
Oh, I was waiting for you. Dang it. Okay, so
yeah, I'm trapped in the middle here because it's like, wait, do you mean by shows or movies as well?
No,
Like,
shows, just the shows.
Okay, just shows. Okay.
yeah, because if it's all time Star Wars, even as much as I love it, it doesn't hold a candle to Empire. So, Empire will always be my favorite. That's top tier number one. That's all valid. Time. But as far as the Star Wars shows go, I think it's a 1A, 1B situation between Mando and Andor. And even though there's
Mandor.
Yeah, exactly. Mandor. There's such great differences between the two of them, but I love them both almost equally because of their differences and the way that, so it's definitely a 1A, 1B, but yeah. And then, Obi is right behind that. So.
Nice. Casey?
I'm in a very similar situation. Mando has given too much to not be as beloved as it is, and it's one that I can continue to go back and watch. I still, even after watching this, it's tough for me to put it above Obi-Wan. I think Obi-Wan being one of my all-time favorite characters and being able to get Ewan McGregor back and him doing what he did with that PTSD and showing that there is change to him, that alteration, that pain, that damage. Like, I don't like that stuff, but they did such a good job of it. It's hard for me to not love it. Yeah. But Andor is more of generally the show I go for. I like the Homecoming, the shows that are all about the subversion.
Such a good show.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I love. And Andor to me had flavors and tastes of all the things that I love that are spy, and I was in the mood for it. So Andor definitely cranked it out. I still have to give it the edge to Obi-Wan for rewatchability. I think I can rewatch Obi-Wan a lot. Yeah. Andor is probably maybe a once a year. Great show, but it's a lot to eat. So,
can I just say how much I appreciate you acknowledging Homecoming, because I've never heard anyone talk about that show, and I love it.
It's amazing. Come on, it was done so well. Damian Lewis crushes it in that show,
dude. Yeah, so good, so good. For me, I've already said it's my favorite series, no questions asked. I'm very much looking forward to watching, after season 2 ends, watching season 1, season 2, Rogue One. Like, that's going to be so fun.
Which could change my rating. All of a sudden, that season 2 could turn this into the best show, bang for my buck,
Yeah.
So,
and a quick side note, Mandalorian season 1, I really need to go back and rewatch that, because I watched that before, like, I got into Star Wars. Like, I just watched it because everyone's talking about it. I was like, I got to see what this is about. And I was like, this is okay. I don't understand why everyone fell in love with this. Like, why do people love this? And now that I know the things I know about Star Wars, I need to go back and give it a good, solid, like, intentful watch,
Yeah, I mean, you already riggedy wrecked yourself, so now it's time to go chickadee check yourself.
Oh my gosh!
So there's that.
Shame. Shame. That was terrible.
You're welcome.
You sure you want this on your show in the morning, Mick? I'm just saying, if you're still here, are you sure? Maybe a good night's sleep will get this out of the system, but.
Nah, man. That I have to stay up throughout just to be delirious, to be mildly amusing in the morning.
There you go. There you go. Good.
Otherwise, I'm just.
I don't know how you guys do a show at 7 a.m. I can hardly.
Very carefully.
Yeah.
It's so much coffee.
Kudos to you guys. So we do have a final rating that Dad calculated behind the scenes.
Thanks, Sweet. Dad.
So if we combine all of our scores, which, by the way, Tim, your final rating, combining all the categories overall for you, 4.456. Very, very nice, solid, conventional number you get in rating systems for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so happy to have helped.
Yes. Casey, you and I actually scored the same. Even with my 3 for the action, we had this at a 4.4. So if we round Tim's, well, if we round up, he's at a 4.5. But we're all pretty much right there at the same. So Dad calculated this as a 4.42 out of 5.
All right. Yeah.
So, Showboys and Friends rate this at a 4.42 out of 5, which in my mind is an absolute must watch. If you're that close to
Agreed.
5, what are you doing? Go watch
Why
it.
are you waiting?
Yeah, well, you should wait till this is over. Then go watch.
That's a pretty good idea there, Normie.
Yeah. Wow, that was a good one. So before we wrap up here, we do a thing every week. It's called Answer the Boys. We post a topic in our Discord. Oh my gosh. Have you guys
and then
ever
we
just
see if he can get through it.
have you guys ever just like got a complete like dried up throat in the middle of a word? Yeah,
Yep.
that's totally what happened there.
It's miserable, especially if you get a weird patch and you can feel it grow real quick. It's
Yeah,
like,
yep, exactly. I've already drank, like I have to pee so bad because I've literally
Same.
slammed like 3 glasses of
We're
water.
all here.
They're
Yep.
like off screen here. I'm like fighting off a sickness I've had for like a week. And,
Yeah, this was I think 44 ounces of water. I've drank probably
nice.
a good 36 of them.
That's why your
And,
eyes are swimming.
Dude, you have no idea right now. I'm gonna walk hunched over to the toilet as soon as this is done. And be like a 12-hour.
rolls
It's
on
gonna
the
be the
ground.
Austin Powers pee. Just
Yeah.
shake,
There for a
shake,
minute.
done.
Just keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, just go.
Keep going.
So yeah, let's see if I can get through this time.
Okay.
Every week we do a thing called Answer the Boys, where we ask for your input on our show's topic of the week. So we asked what you guys thought of Andor. So we got a reply from Rachel's Holiday. This all takes place in our Discord, by the way. If you're not, it's happening again.
Oh God. Oh, it's there.
If you're not in our Discord, you should be. And the link is in the episode description. Rachel's Holiday says, I've been doing a lousy job talking about Andor in the spoilers channel because we have a spoilers channel for all the shows that we talk about. But I loved Andor. From a feminist perspective, they did a kick-ass job ultimately showing how awesome women are at running things behind the scenes on both sides, light and dark. On the light side, we have Mon Mothma, Bix, Cinta, Vel, and Clea. On the dark side, we have Deidre. And the show writers managed to write women who are full people with compelling personalities and backstories. I almost butchered that one. Full people with compelling personalities and backstories. Piggybacking on the writing, all the characters are written so well. Even with limited screen time, you really get to know most of the characters, and I thought that was great. Within the lore of Star Wars, I feel like this does a great job at world and history building before Rogue One, which basically you just recapped everything we talked about so perfectly. Thank you so much for your reply, Rachel.
I give I give that writing a 4.42.
4.42 out of 5. You sure you want to go to a 4.456? Your last chance.
Well, I feel like it's collective. All three of us will pool our talents together.
Bingo.
And come up with a 4.42.
You guys definitely doing the heavy lifting in that department. But yeah, Rachel, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your reply to Answer the Boys. We appreciate you. We always love hearing from you guys and your input and getting to talk about those on the show. So one last time before we wrap up here, go check out Tim from the FSF PopCast. His website is linked below in the episode description. Go check out Casey and Mick over at the scenesnobs.com. Is it a .com?
It is, in fact, a .com.
Scenesnobs.com. It's in the episode description below. Tune in tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, for a nice morning drive show.
It's worth your time.
Make sure you tune in to Showboys Gaming, Showboys Podcast on Twitch. Sunday night, we have our Dungeons and Dragons stream coming up. And if you caught the stream last time, holy cow, we ended on such a crazy plot twist. Like, my character's world was just literally turned upside down, and I did not see this coming as a player. Like, I have no idea how to play my character now. I'm ruined. I'm still in shock, and we play again in like 3 days, so I don't know what's going to happen. So you're going to want to tune into that 8 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, without further ado, thank you guys so much.
Thank you
for coming on. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, check out our friends, and we'll see you next week.
If he's still able to talk.
Yeah,
Nick and Chad, please come back.
If he's gonna survive,
Please. Please. You know, one thing that we forgot. I love how the overlays perfectly over Tim's face.
What happened? World.
Oh my gosh, that was
We're still live.